Hey class, welcome to week 13 of the Structure of Information course. Hope everybody's doing well. Hope everybody's looking forward to the end of the semester coming soon. Today we're going to be talking about the economics of information. I'm going to share my screen here. Get right into the lecture. Let me move this down a bit so you can get to the lecture. All right, so today we're talking about economics and information and how both are tied together. They're deeply related. For example, news and information of a certain type of thing can affect stocks going up. I know some people have this topic, stocks for their infographic. And stocks are shares in a company. For those of you who don't know, stocks are shares in a company. Let's say I started a water bottle company and I wanted to sell shares. I'll start with 100 shares at a dollar each. And let's say my water is voted the best in New York State or New Jersey, and then my shares will go up. So stock prices are are really tied to the information. I don't know if any of you watched this show on Showtime called Billions. It's a cool show, and they like try to get all this information to predict the stock price. So I'm going to show you two examples of how stock prices when directly affected stocks. Here we have Pfizer. This was in the days of the vaccine trials. This was from 2 years ago. If you don't know, you can Google any kind of stock here. Google has a great finance website as well. So we're going to go 5 years. And we're going to go to November 9th in 2020. So I think November 9th, because it's 5 years ago, they break it down. But you can see between November 9th and November 6th, the stock price started to go up 36 a share, and then it went up to 42 a share on the positive results of the first vaccine. The same thing with Moderna. We can do the finance website. Go to 5 years. What day was that one? That was November 16th. You can see here the 13th and the 20th, stock price went up crazy. And and Google has these articles here to tell you, that's a good thing about Google, why the stock price went up. And you can also Google it. Let's say June 2021, June 2021, Moderna stock, and we can see why it went up. Here we can easily Google why it went up. It jumped to a record because it showed that it beat the Delta variant with the new strain or whatever they had, with the new vaccine or whatever. 2 years ago, Kodak, which has performed really bad since the transition from analog to digital film, the stock price is really bad. But 2 years ago, the stock price jumped really high, and people were wondering why did that happen. Some news came out that Kodak was trying to pivot into making vaccines, and people thought it was a good buy. People always trying to look for a low buy that's going to increase really high. Let's go to 2 years ago. You can see when that happened in the summer, the news, the stock price was literally $2. It went up to 21. That's 1,000% increase. And imagine, maybe me or you, some of us who use Robinhood or all these other stockbroker programs, maybe we're investing a couple hundred, couple thousand, but people that are making millions, who are betting millions, a lot is riding on that. So the information can make you tons of money just from stock information alone. More recently, the medicine company, sorry, getting tongue-tied here, Eli Lilly had a huge problem. In recent days, Twitter has this, Elon Musk bought Twitter, and it's chaos on Twitter. So usually on Twitter, to become verified, you have to come through this really big process. But Elon Musk, and trying to make a profit with Twitter, did this thing where you can just buy a verification for $8. What did that do? Tons of fake spoof accounts made themselves verified, and it cost this company billions of dollars. Why? This is a fake tweet that says, excuse me, that they're going to stop charging for insulin. They stop charging, the company's not going to make enough money. The people who are invested in it want to drop out, and the stock price fell from 368 a share to 346 a share. Doesn't seem that bad if it's only $20, but we're talking about hundreds of thousands of shares. That's like $1 billion according to erase billions in market cap. So that's a problem when we talk about information and verifying information. Twitter is losing its credibility because of these processes where they're trying to make money. You can see the implications it has here. Imagine the implications in another country we talked about before, where somebody's impersonating a president and saying, let's go to war, and people who don't know about this type of stuff follow it, or similar examples. Like, that's an extreme example, but those things could happen. Millions of people are employed in positions that provide us with information. Think about the government, the media, IT. When we need information, we need a birth certificate, we need our vaccine records, we need a new driver's license. So many people are involved in the economics of information. So now we're going to go into some terms here about information that relate to economics and information. So a private good. What's a private good? It's something consumed by one person that benefits them. It can be used by one person or a group, while other persons can be excluded. So a private good is a sweater, my glasses, a fancy Montclair coat, fancy tequila, ice cream, $1,000 sundae. It's when one group can be excluded from something, whether you have the money or not. And we talk about a coat. Think about like homeless people. That's a private good that they don't have. People in the street, they always have these coat drives and things like that. This was a meme from a few years ago relating to the whole PS5, Xbox mess where the bots were not stealing them, but buying the pre-orders and the online orders and reselling them for thousands. Now we have a public good. A public good is something that is used by many people at the same time, and the value of the good doesn't decrease by the use. So if we look about how Rutgers, maybe sometimes they have these free wine and cheese events, too many people means there's no more beer and wine. That's not a public good, because public goods don't decrease by use. So for example, we have free Wi-Fi and water fountains. These are a public good. They're always there. It doesn't go down by use. Although maybe the Wi-Fi might if there's too many people on the network. But I remember when I went to Medellin, in Colombia, their public Wi-Fi was so good. There was probably thousands of people. It was Christmas time. They had these lights, and I was just waiting there for the lights. Thousands of people were there using their Wi-Fi, and I was downloading Netflix, and everybody was connected. And I couldn't believe how incredible that was. And I don't think here, even in America, I've seen public Wi-Fi that good. Merit good is a private good that society has deemed important enough to supply publicly. So what's an example? Education and public bathrooms. Everybody needs to use the restroom, and it becomes a problem when you go shopping. Where can I go? You go to a mall, they have public restrooms. Some places don't have public restrooms. In New York City, there's a big problem, and there's this spoof Instagram account that's gotten really famous that's trying to like help us, because think about it. If you're in the city, where do you go? New York City. Sorry, New York. People from New York call Manhattan the city, but if you're in Manhattan and you got to use the bathroom, where are you going to use the bathroom? Starbucks, but now Starbucks has a little code and they don't let you use the bathroom. They don't want people to use it unless you buy something. It's a problem. So this is a spoof account called Old Jewish Men, and they're like advocating for more toilets because they're saying they're old and they always have to use the bathroom. Turn the volume. This is a kind of a funny account. And they're selling like their own spoof things, and they're making they're embracing their stereotypes. It's a sort of like mockery for themselves, and it's a funny account. You can look it up. Moving on, externality. It's when one thing or person or group does something that affects other people or group. So let's say we were in a classroom and somebody started smoking, whether it was weed or cigarettes, it would affect us, right? Maybe we would get secondhand high, or maybe we would choke from the cigarette smoke. It would affect you. And that's in the most basic sense, but you got to think about in the bigger sense, voting. Whether you vote or not, the votes that are counted or not counted affect you. Lobbyists, what they do behind the scenes, it affects you. Maybe you're for something or against something, and lobbyists are for the other thing, and they're putting all this money to be against you. So generally, information doesn't deplete. We can't use up information, right? we as a class, we can't use up Statista. We can't use Pew Research and say, oh, there's no more Pew Research for the next student. But in certain terms of information to where they're stored, they can be depleted. When we look at books, especially rare books, have one at a time use and can deteriorate. It's just a library that has really rare books. Just going to show you a little bit of that.
Can also be criterion alone for being in the rare book room. Right. So for that, 1801 is oftentimes a cutoff. Yes, you can actually see part, but then they created 2 volumes. This is only one of the volumes that has.
I think these rare book collections are super interesting. When I went to the library in Alexandria, Egypt, I wanted to see some rare books, but it's not like how it used to be with the Seven Wonders of the World. But you do get to see some books in cases that are super old, hundreds of years old, thousands of years old. Repeated use can mess up some types of information. Think about records and CDs. You ever miss or video game? If you keep using it, mismanaging it, you can not use it anymore. The skips, and you'd have to buy a whole new CD. And if that CD is still around, this is a problem. This is the digital age solves this issue. So another example of this is photos. Photos are information. My grandparents have tons of rare photos, and they stored them wrong. They're all messed up. Water went on them. They're stuck together. And we can lose information by that. Like, who's this in this picture? Now in the digital age, that'll never happen unless the cloud is destroyed or something. Usually what people should do is have an external hard drive with the photos and have them on the cloud just in case. So information in itself is a public good. Sometimes the public can be excluded from information, usually when it comes to insider trading. So what is insider trading? We're talking a lot about stocks here. And when we talked about the news, it's when somebody in a company has information of the company, and they know, and they use that to get to monetary gain. This is illegal, even if you work in the company. This famously happened to Martha Stewart, who was in the boardroom meetings and knew they were going to make a decision that was going to affect the price. She went around trying to make more money than what she already had, and had to go to jail for a couple months or a couple years. I don't remember how long. So going back to the example of the water company, let's say I have a water company, and my family's part of the board because it's a family business. And my brother knows that the water supply is going to go down and we're not going to be able to produce. In stocks, you could bet on stocks going up. You could also bet on stocks going down. So if he goes and tells his friend, hey, put $1 million down so the stocks, bet against the stocks, that's insider trading. And you can go to jail for that. Senator Richard Burr is currently under investigation by the FBI, and he's still under investigation. This was 2 years ago. They hasn't resolved the case. Basically, a lot of the politicians in Congress and the president had a meeting before the pandemic, and they wanted to talk about how severe it was. And so behind closed doors, well, in public, Donald Trump and Congress people were saying it's not that bad, but behind closed doors, they warned each other. This is going to hit the economy bad. The stocks are going to go down. Before all that came out, they sold all their stocks, and they saved millions of dollars. So he's being investigated for the FBI for the insider trading. Let me make sure I didn't pass any slides. So even though information is deemed a public good, traditionally it isn't free. Think about it. We have to pay for books, newspapers, magazines, music, movies, etc. And that's where libraries come in as a public good. The government, the local town, the cities subsidize your tax money. They take your tax money and invest in libraries that are public good. When you go to libraries in wealthier neighborhoods, they're better than the ones in the poorer neighborhoods because the tax money is more, they have more funds and things like that. But regardless, libraries are public good, and they help us get these things that necessarily aren't for free. Before the internet, you had to pay for all of this. Even though the cost was low, it wasn't free. Lots of movies and more info is moving online. I talked famously throughout this class about the Lonely Planet guide. Less and less I'm relying on it because I can just go on these blogs, wiki travel, Google where I want to go. I mean, I look through it here and there, especially now. It's my library, my local library has an online database where I can go through and I can rent it. So we're moving less and less from the physical medium of these public good things to the digital medium, and they're becoming more and more free. Oftentimes, and this is where I have a gripe as a former newspaper reporter, oftentimes radio and TV take the news from newspapers and present it to you for free. What would they do without the newspapers? In this model, the cost to run the programs are paid for advertisers. This is the same as the internet. Advertisers pay more for views and clicks. So who pays for the radio? When you listen to 1010 Wins, when you listen to Hot 97, who pays for that? It's all those Salino and Barnes ads, go to this foot doctor. They pay for that. Then they go by viewership. The more viewership you have and the more niche targeted viewership you have, you can pay more for advertisers. So for example, and it's not to stereotype, if you have ESPN radio, you're going to have more success selling tennis rackets to ESPN radio, and you're going to have more success selling hip tickets to Rolling Loud on Hot 97. Because niche advertising, we go back to the days of magazines and how that works. Sometimes information costs a different amount for the quality of the information. So think about when you buy a newspaper. If you buy a New York Post, I don't even know how much they cost nowadays. When I was growing up, it was like 50 cents or a dollar versus the Financial Times, which costs a couple dollars, $3, $4, $5. Why? The quality of the information in the Financial Times and New York Times is way better. Especially if you're in stocks, you're going to have all the insider stuff that you need to make decisions for yourself, for your job. So newsrooms pay access for, these are all types of organizations that pay access for information. We pay access for LexisNexis.
Hi, this is Kate Wilson with the International Consortium.
Here's a little bit, if you don't know what Lexis looks like,
This time I want to show
how you can show what it
to
looks like.
background a person.
And I talked about this
Now,
previously in the
we've
semester.
seen in previous tutorials how to use the federal court records database, but it's a lot more difficult if you're trying to find court records in a state or local jurisdiction. Now, when I enter Nexus, I go to public records. This will allow me to search for an individual or to go to all searches. In this case, I want to look for criminal records. Now let's look up Michael Mastromarino in all states. When you search, you'll get a lot of different hits, but you notice it's not always the same person. You want to be careful to narrow it as much as possible. If you know.
So LexisNexis has database that takes public records and provides it easily for newsrooms and criminal, like police departments and things like that. FBI, and the FBI has their own database. And it's great to find stuff when you're doing a story. As journalists, we have training for this. This is one of the training videos that we had to watch, and it gets way more in depth, search features. You can find almost anybody and anything in this that you don't really have online. Well, now we kind of do what we showed about the Googling our name and those little websites, but this is more accurate. The cost is subsidized for journalism programs. This is the same when we have access to academic journals. Schools pay less. Have you ever tried, well, you probably haven't, but when you graduate school and you ever look for college, you ever try to look for academic journal? And if it's not publicly posted online, it's a pain. You have to pay a lot of money to just view that academic journal. So government access to information. Our taxes, like I mentioned before, pay for information. We pay for indictments. We pay for federal reports, congressional reports. We pay for the Smithsonian Museum, etc. We pay all through our taxes. The government also pays for information by rewarding grants for research papers and studies. Let's say there's a study at Rutgers about new computer chip or a new form of oxygen tank that can help us go to the moon. The government will provide a grant for that. If you don't want to know, one of the greatest databases, and the comptroller who does the finances is always like looking for this, like, oh, I helped people gain 7 billion in unclaimed funds. All Google your name, maybe because you guys are on the younger side, you won't really find money, but I found 300 here, got my mom 500 one time here. You can find money like sometimes when you leave a job quickly or you didn't do your taxes or something. Let's see. I used to live in Jersey, so maybe I have some money for me. I lived in Jersey City. Let's see here. No, that's not me. It's not getting my first name. So you don't know how much money you have in this? So I'm definitely not here. Let's just look at this person. Oops. You don't know how much money you have in this, and when it comes, you'll figure it out. I check every few years, and I check for my family members' names when I'm bored. So what is FOIA? How do we get, if the government controls so much of our information, how do we get someone access to that information? So the FOIA is the Freedom of Information Act. Everyone has a right to information the federal government keeps, but oftentimes they may redact information deemed sensitive. We've seen this recently with Trump and the Mar-a-Lago search. They wanted the records to be public, but they had to redact a lot of information. Why do they redact? Sometimes they redact for their own good, but a lot of times they redact for public good or because it might leak out sensitive information. So for example, if there was a criminal case and I wanted to research and it would say law enforcement cooperative Fausto Pinto told the FBI that the gang was going to do this and there, they have to cross out that name because the gang could get access to that information and kill that person. So you can all request. When I studied journalism, we all had to do sample FOIA letters. You can find a template here and it tells you what you want, and you can look up your name, or you could look up the name of somebody famous if you're interested in. It costs nothing, or you can, sometimes they want to pay, but governments and state governments and police departments are notoriously difficult in a sense that they try to make this information as hard as possible to get to you. They'll do it as a floppy disk, so you don't have access to it. They'll do it for when data sets. They'll make data sets as a PDF, so you can't organize them in charts and look at them. They try to do those things so make it harder for you to access that information, and they might just deny the request. Sometimes requests go to the Supreme Court and courts. Let's see. There's all these types of where they appeal the decision and they have to go before a judge and even close doors and decide whether they could do it or not. Sorry, this thing up here is always getting in the way. Let me mute my Spotify. So one of the cool things you can do if you're bored, you can go to the vault. This is the FOIA library of the FBI, and you can see cool things about people. So let's go. They have it categorized here. You can also search the gangster era, organized crime, World War II. Let's look at I wonder if they have Jeffrey Dahmer since he's been in the news recently. I don't know how to spell his name, so let me Google it. And let's see if he's in this FBI files. Sorry, let me close some of these things. Let's go back and actually search. Oh, he is here. There's a bunch of pages. Why can't I see page 1? Oh, let's see what records they have on Jeffrey Dahmer. You see how they redacted some information here. So these are actual FBI records you can look at here, and there's tons of people. I don't. My name won't be in the vault, but you can probably look. I think I did it, and I don't think my name was showing up. But sometimes they do follow reporters. I never got that big to be followed. Things like that. All right, back to the lesson. States have FOIA laws under different names. In New Jersey, it's called Oprah. And you can have to follow the same request. We have templates, we file for them. I want the police records, I want the body cam footage, I want the 911 calls. Like I had a mentor that said, ask for everything. 911 calls were a big clickbait kind of thing. It was super interesting sometimes. Sometimes we needed body cam footage because we want to show the public what really happened. Sometimes cops are hiding information for their own good because they did something wrong. And all those things are all those public entities, fire department, all of that is under Oprah. Ambulance.
Yes. Hi, Mike Rossetti from Boston Globe.
Here's a famous scene and thing that related to the FOIA request.
All right. Thank you.
These exhibits you're after, Mr. Resendez, they're very sensitive records.
All due respect, Your Honor, that's not the question. The records are public.
Maybe so, but tell me, where is the editorial responsibility in publishing records of this nature?
Well, where's the editorial responsibility in not publishing them?
Can't take those. You need to make copies.
Go into the copy room.
It closed at 4.
I'll give you $83. Use yours.
This is how the Catholic abuse scandal in Boston was discovered. A lot of hard-hitting investigative journalism is discovered through FOIA requests, data sets, accounting, things like that from governments and stuff. A lot of people, I remember I took an investigative journalism class in grad school, and we had an award-winning investigative journalist from the New York Times teaching the class, and he told us a lot of people think investigative journalism is tailgating following somebody in a car. A lot of it is record requests and shifting through those records. It can be a pain. If you know Excel, it's pivot charts and all of that, and I hated all that stuff. You can find silly things in Freedom of Information requests. Let's see what's the number one here. Let's see. FTC complaints about dating websites. You see, you have silly things here. You can check this out, Google it. It's super interesting. Okay, moving on. Education access. Access to information through education can be biased, favoring the wealthy, oftentimes excluding minorities. For example, New York City Public Specialized High School. New York City, I don't know how it works now. They're trying to edit it and they change it around, and they had only 3 when I was growing up. But New York City publicly has 3 famous specialized high schools for the top tier students: Stuyvesant, Bronx Science, and Brooklyn Tech. And if you got to these schools, you were the top of the top. And they were always full of Asian and Caucasian students. And they said, how do poor minority students who make up the majority of New York City students, how do we get equal access to it? Because if the population of New York City public schools as a whole is 70% minority, why are they only 5% in these public specialized schools? Those are not exact numbers, I'm just making it up, but it's something like that. And so when I was growing up, I was on the smarter scale, and I went to a specialized after school, summer school, where they were training me to be one of these students to get into this school. I hated it. I had to do such hard work, and I wanted to just have my summer, and I got out of it. And the way it works is they train you for these tests to get you in there. And famously, people with more money study for this test for years, while poor minority students who don't have access to that do bad and don't get into the schools. Oops. Moving on, government-owned media. In some countries, we talked about this before, government is control of the media. They work to shut down public stations that are critical of leaders. We're going to pass this because we already talked about this. You can pause the video and read about Nicolas Maduro in Venezuela. So we have to talk about intellectual property. Any product of the human intellect that the law protects from unauthorized use by 4 others. There's 4 types of intellectual property. Number 1, we have trade secrets. They protect secrets and information. Some examples is the Coca-Cola formula or the KFC formula. If that came out, I could make my own KFC and make money off of their recipe. Then you have trademarks. It protects brands. So Apple for cell phones. You have copyrights, protects works of authorship, books, drawing, movies, music. copyright. I made that song. I don't want you to use it. For example, there's so much political back and forth between groups. A lot of times when Trump first came out, he would come out to these songs and the artist would be like, that's infringement of copyright. I don't give you permission to use that song because I don't support you. Now we have patents, protects functional or whatever features. So you can have the swipe function on the iPhone, famous patent for the light bulb, things like that. So recent examples, Cardi B tried to patent the word or copyright the word, her okay thing, whatever. I'm not going to say it. You could Google it, you know what she says. And they said it was too general for her to do it. In New Jersey, we had this story where Wawa sued this fake thing called Dawa. And they said the name was infringing on their copyright and their trademark because they have a trademark for the name Wawa. On second glance, you might think, oh, that's Wawa. You go in, hey, this is not Wawa. Wawa don't sell Bronx pizza and chicken and stuff like that. So copyrights, going more into copyrights. For works created after January 1st, 1978, copyright protection lasts for the life of the author plus an additional 70 years. For example, the copyright on the Harry Potter books in the US, because copyright laws change all over the world, it would have to, nobody can make anything Harry Potter until 70 years after J.K. Rowling dies in the US. And how that works is she can sell some of the copyright to Warner Brothers, who owns the films, and they make money off the video games. And at the end, it trickles down all to J.K. Rowling. So we have a lot of copyright issues. This was created to promote creativity, and instead it has become an obstacle. One of the biggest things, if you're a hip hop fan, you know about copyright clearance, is when the artist allows their work to be used in other songs, movies, and video games. I grew up in the early 2000s where mixtapes were so big, and a lot of my favorite mixtapes are not on Spotify. Why? Because in those mixtapes, the rappers are rapping over other person's music or beats, and they never got the clearance for that. And so if they put it on a streaming site, they put it on those bootleg CDs, it doesn't really matter. But if they put it on the streaming site or it's making money, it has copyright issues. So a lot of the famous mixtapes are not on Spotify, or they might come on or they might come off. A crazy example that recently happened was Drake and Kanye were beefing for years. Drake's first first commercial mixtape, because he had other like mixtapes, whatever, was So Far Gone. And on it, he raps on a beat. I think it's Say You Will from Kanye 808 and Heartbreak. So they were saying for the 10-year anniversary, they want to put it on Spotify, but they had to get the Kanye clearance because it was Kanye's song, and they were beefing at the time. I think there was so much backlash against Kanye not allowing that he let it go through. And So Far Gone is on Spotify now. But what they do now, I know ASAP Rocky, the mixtape, I don't know the name, I'm always confused, Live, Love, whatever. They're missing like 2 or 3 songs that I really like because they didn't pass a copyright clearance. So another terms of economics and information, generic drugs. A brand name drug patent expires after 20 years in the US, and then the drug can be made generically. This is a good and bad thing. It should not be 20 years. People, for insulin and life-saving drugs that cost tons of money, we should have access to generics right away. These companies are making billions of dollars off of our sickness, and that sucks. And even in other countries, it's not that way. I have asthma, and I rarely have asthma anymore, but I use asthma pumps and I carry them with me just in case. When I didn't have insurance, buying an asthma pump in the US costs $200. Anywhere else in the world, they literally cost $5, even in Western advanced societies like UK. So one of the most, moving on, one of the most successful drugs of our modern time, Viagra. In 2016, Pfizer generated 1.6 billion in sales from the drug alone. And it's also one of the most counterfeited drugs ever. In 2017, the patent expired. It went from $60 a pill to $30 a pill to around $5 for a generic version. So now we have some free sources of information for you. We have what's called the Creative Commons. You can search for anything here. Let's look up this town. This is the southernmost city in the world. It's in Argentina. Let's see what photos they have of this town here. I was there last year. Sorry for annoying you guys with all the travel related stuff. And you can see this is a picture, and we can use this. I can use this anything because this is free to use. You cannot just copy and paste Let me copy you. You cannot just copy and paste photos whenever you see on the internet. So if I were to do this, I cannot just copy and paste these photos. Somebody might have copyrighted this photo. Photographers copyright their work to not to be stolen. Creative Commons, you can use it. One of the other things Google you can use, you go to tools, you do usage rights, Creative Commons licenses, and I can use any photo here, mostly on Flickr or Wikipedia Commons. I can use any of these photos here without being copywriting or stealing. Please don't steal on the internet, especially people's works, artists. Artists spend time to do these things, and use Creative Commons to get the photos that you need. This is the legal way to use it and not the legal way, i.e. BitTorrent. So the Library of Congress holds a collection of lots of work. Most of it is housed in DC, and little by little, they're putting it online. This is, I think, the first film. This is an early film.
From the Library of Congress in Washington, D.C.
This is not the first film. The first one was the horse running. There you go. You can find a lot of cool niche things in the Library of Congress. There's also open source software such as Linux you can download for free and use and edit, and you also make it better. You have apps, Apple apps, you can create programs and things like that if you're a developer. So internet is making information more free. We talked about this throughout the semester. It's taking local in-depth knowledge and supplying it for free. Think about how I wanted to cook an obscure Ethiopian dish. I have no idea. I have to go to Barnes & Noble and buy a cookbook. I have to go to a restaurant and eat it. Now I just look online. Just look online, copy it, make it at home. Think about the economics of that implication. The restaurant's losing money. The cookbooks are losing money. How to pass a stage in Zelda. Back in the old days, we used to go to Toys R Us and buy these guides and like $20. I remember I was famously stuck, Legend of Zelda Nintendo 64, famously stuck on one level. I could not beat it. I had to buy the guide. I don't know if we had internet at that point, but it wasn't that advanced, and it was only in the guide. Then later on, I used to be a huge Final Fantasy fan. I used to just go on these like websites that was all text, and I could find how to get all the rare weapons, secret bosses, and things like that. When I go to travel, sorry to annoy you guys again. When I go to the ruins of a place, I don't pay for a guide. I just break out my phone and I look on Wikipedia or something else. We have a lot of economic implications of, we think about economic implications of digital technology in terms of Uber, self-driving cars, and robots, but think about just the information aspect and where the money is moving and where the money is lost. And again, we have to be careful of where we're getting the information and its validity. So we've seen this in the movie that we watched. One of the biggest things that relates to information and economics is Facebook. So Facebook's terms of use implicitly say, if you read it, they give the right to use, copy, publicly perform, publicly display, reformat, translate, excerpt, and distribute each user content for any purpose, commercial, advertising, or otherwise. We always have this stupid thing where, I don't know if anybody uses Facebook anymore. I use it once in a while to check my family stuff. One of my aunts will post this. I do not give information for Facebook, and it comes out every year. I do not give information. I do not copy and repost this. I don't give Facebook information to reuse my photos. That's fake. But they can use your data. They are using your data. It's a public service you enjoy for free, but they're selling your data. They have to make money somehow. All your data is there, and there's big implications about this. You'll see it in the film you have to watch, John Oliver. You'll read it in the reading you have. Would you pay to not have your data not sold? Let's get away from Facebook. Let's look at Instagram or TikTok where you use it for free. If you could withhold your data, would you pay instead of having your data stolen? Or do you even care? Like, do we care if our data is stolen? Like, I don't check nothing big, like I'm just going shopping online. Who cares if they steal my data? They'll recommend me a shirt that I want to buy. That's some of the arguments that younger people are having, and other people are like, no, that's my privacy and so forth. So would you pay $10 or $5 to use a data-free sharing social media website? So that ties into surveillance capitalism, which is one of the readings that we have and what we talked about a little bit over the semester. So there's two types of people in surveillance capitalism. There's the watchers and the watched. We are the watched. They're monitoring all our data, all our things, all our cookies, Google, Facebook, Instagram. What did I search? Oh, I searched smart wool socks because I like to go hiking and they have these socks that don't sweat and they better material, they're soft, they're comfortable. Right away I go online, I go on Instagram, it shows new different pair of wool socks from REI, and I shop at REI. But everything is connected. When I go to REI, my email is my Gmail account, my credit card is connected, everything is connected online, and so they know this stuff about us. There's algorithms that work to sell us our data and things like that and buy us things and make money off of that. So the quote that the person that made this surveillance capital term, I'm blanking out of her name right now. She famously says these two quotes: once we search Google, but now Google searches us. Digital services are free, but surveillance capitalists think of us as free data. Before the internet, it was so hard to get data. You had to do surveys, you had to go out and do things. And I don't know if we talked about it this class, Cambridge Analytica. This ties into the next quote she has. Let me mention the quote and then I go back. We can engineer the context around a particular behavior and force change that way. So Cambridge Analytica is a famous scandal with this app that was tied to Facebook and was stealing things. And so they have this thing called psychoanalytics. And to break it down, they did it on a bigger scale. They looked at, let's say you live in a small town, there's a mayor. They could use your Facebook and say, 40% are for this candidate 1, 40% are for candidate 2. And so it's going to be a tie. So what about the other 20%? They looked at the psychoanalytics using Facebook data. They weren't supposed to do this. And they said, you know what? We can sway votes. If we sway just a little bit of people into the side candidate A, we can claim the election. And they use this for the 2016 election. They use this for, forgot this guy's name from Texas. They use it to help his election. And it's a thing. Psychoanalytics can predict and push you by targeted ads into vote for another candidate if they target people on the fence. So do we care though? Do you care? Think about it. Do you care that they're targeting you and forcing a particular behavior? One thing that happened to me recently was I kept seeing these drinks on Instagram called Cutwater Classic. There's these cans in a cocktail. And they got me. I tried it and I loved it. So it was like, in a sense, I didn't really care, right? Like I got put onto a new thing that's now my drink of choice because it's cheap and it gets me drunk and blah, blah, and it works, right? You know, like, so in a sense, do we care? I think there's always going to be a group of people who are super picky about things and like, I don't want nothing stolen from me. I think as a younger generation, as long as it's not harmful, it doesn't sway elections, I think we're okay with it. Think about it in your terms. What effects this has for you? And then we have Data Brokers, which is the film that you'll watch by John Oliver. Whenever we go, and I mentioned this, whenever we go online, we live little pieces of ourselves. They're collected and sold. This has happened since the AOL days, but there's implications. Remember when I Google my name, I have my address, my grandpa's address. What if I have a crazy ex that wants to kill me or go to my grandpa, or I'm involved in drugs? Theoretically, I'm not involved. And they say, hey, we got your grandpa ransom. If you don't give us $200,000 or you know, whatever, we're going to kill him. Like, think about those implications that has. Sorry, I'm doing the drugs. I'm watching this show on HBO Max called Gomorrah about drug dealers in Italy. It's a super good show. I think that's why I had that in my mind. But think about those implications of data brokers, and it's not going away. The John Oliver movie is super scary in terms of that, the implications that it had. Somebody died because of this. They bought, you know, those websites that I showed you guys. Somebody bought it for $14, found their ex's address, murdered them. And it takes a while to get that out. So that's the economics of information. A lot of stuff tied to information and money. I'm going to leave you with this video that talks more about capitalism and money. I'm not going to play
Teachers, farmers, but consumers.
because it's 20 minutes long and you're gonna watch it blurry secondhand. Watch it when you're done watching this lecture. Hope you guys have a good week. See you guys soon.